Self-management in ABA. Self-management in ABA. Self-management in ABA? Over my 20 plus years in the behavior field, I've not heard a lot of talk about self-management. But one place I did hear about it was in 2018 at the ABA International Conference. I participated in a workshop called Exploring the Systematic Use of Self-Monitoring as a Behavioral Intervention, the Self and Match System. And that presentation was given by my two guests today, Dr. Catherine M. Croce and Jamie Salter. I can't wait to talk with them, so let's get started today on just 7 steps. Today, I have the distinct pleasure to get to chat with two behavior analysts responsible for the main school-based self-monitoring system I use called Self and Match, and it was created by my guest today. The first is Jamie Salter, BCBA. Jamie received her educational specialist degree, nationally certified school psychologist status, and her BCBA certification through Lehigh University. Jamie's been actively involved in supporting children with autism for over 20 years. These experiences include serving as a supervisor of the U.S. Department of Education training grant, overseeing a school-based clinic that provided an emphasis on intensive behavioral interventions, work as a social skills and sibling support groups facilitator, providing in-home behavioral interventions, and as a presenter at multiple international conferences. She also authored the Self and Match System, an evidence-based self-monitoring intervention that is grounded in the principles of behavior analysis with our other guest, Dr. Catherine Croce, BCBA D. Katie received her doctorate in educational leadership from St. Joseph University, her MS in education and applied behavior analysis from Temple University, a BA in psychology from LaSalle University, and her autism certificate from Penn State. That lady's been around. Katie has worked as a behavior analyst and a special education program coordinator in schools, in homes, and in inpatient hospital for children and adolescents with ASD, among other designations. I first met these two back in 2018 when I was at ABA International Conference in sunny San Diego, and I was so pleased to have taken their workshop and learned about the system we will be talking about today. So, without any further ado, I've always wanted to say that. Okay, now really without any further ado, Jamie and Katie. All right, hello, fellow behavior analysts. I wanted to thank you guys both for coming in on the show today. I know that you probably don't realize this, but I consider you guys to be a big get for the podcast. I've been a fan of your Self and Match system since I first learned about it back in 2018. So the first thing I wanted to ask you was, when did you guys first develop your system and make it available? Because I'm curious to find out if I was actually an early adopter or not.
I would say you were kind of a mid-early adopter, if I were to say it. Katie and I actually developed it very organically when we were in graduate school back in 2005. And so our very first ABAI that we shared it at, it was us with a manila folder and hey, here's a little bit about Self and Match. And back then it was very, very organic. So by the time you came to us, we had a manual, we had materials. And so what do you think, Katie? Early adopter?
Yeah, I would say a mid adopter. Yeah, but it's really,
I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I still feel good about that. In fact, I have the manual here in my library.
Oh,
I
yay.
think it was handed from one of you two, handed it directly to me at the time. And yes, I absolutely have used it quite a bit over the years. I've taught the approach or the system to my team in Germany, and so they've used it there as well. So yeah, there's quite a few kids that have benefited from the work that you guys have done that you may have never met before. So that's kind of cool, right?
That's absolutely cool. And that's what keeps us going. So thanks for that fun story. And
Yeah.
something else really fun is you showed your really cute, bright yellow manual, just like our background. And that is the one we had up until August of this year. We'll have to get you our newest edition that came out in August that has a very different cover, but the same content. We can tell you a little bit later about some of the updates that came with that new edition.
Okay, so there's been some updates, but overall, the majority of it's still kind of the base is still the same.
Absolutely, absolutely. None of that foundational elements have changed in the slightest bit.
Okay, well, we're going to get into the system. We're going to definitely talk about it. Let you explain to my listeners kind of what it's all about and what the benefit is. But before I get into that, I do always like to ask my guests what it is that got them into applied behavior analysis personally. So if you guys don't mind sharing, how did you find your way into our noble profession?
I loved working in a helping field, and I knew I wanted to work in some type of giving back field since I was really young. When I was in high school, I was working at summer camps as inclusion counselors, and then I was working at the Children's Hospital Autism Laboratory when I was in graduate school or high school and college. And then I thought I wanted to be a school psychologist full time. So when I was going through college and graduate school, I started going down the school psych path, and I was in a really amazing school psychology program at Lehigh University. And one of my mentors, Dr. Ed Shapiro, said, it seems like school psychology is for you, but have you heard much about ABA? And at that point, I hadn't. And so I started to dig deep, and I was like, even though my dad's a clinical psychologist, my brother's a clinical psychologist, my cousin's a clinical psychologist, my sister-in-law, I think that my path is different. I think I really want to get hands-on, and I really want to be developing interventions and seeing those interventions through, and getting to be a part of the behavior change. And so my very first semester of graduate school is when I pivoted from just doing straight school psychology to doing a concurrent program of both school psychology and ABA. So from there, I kind of crossed paths with a lot of amazing mentors and got to meet Katie very early on our graduate work. And that's how I fell into ABA. It was kind of sudden and unexpected for me.
So it really was just an introduction from a professor, right?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. From a professor that said, I think you might want to do both of these at once. And if it hadn't been for him, I probably would have been a traditional school psych my whole career, which would have also been amazing. I have utmost respect for school psychologists, and I'm so glad that I did both of those programs, because for me, I like to weave in the consultation piece and all the different pieces I got from both of my programs at once.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing. And Katie, how about you? How did your journey
Yeah.
begin?
So I started my career as an undergrad psychology criminal justice major. I thought that I was going to work with juvenile youth who were finding the kind of their wrong paths and get them on the right path. And then my junior year, the summer between my senior and junior year, I was looking for a job that was related to my field so I could get some hands-on experience. And so this was so long ago that I was looking in the newspaper in the classified section when that was a thing that people would do. And there was a teeny tiny ad, and it said, psychology and education majors call this number. And so that's what I did. I called the number, and it was a family who lived a couple of towns over from where I grew up, and they were looking for people to run their in-home ABA program. I met their children. I was always really good with kids. I babysat. I was a swim coach. I was a lifeguard. I taught people how to swim. But when I went to this house and I went to meet with the family, I could not get their children to interact with me in any way, shape, or form. They cried the whole time that I was there. And when I left being there, I told my parents, oh, this is never going to work out. They're not going to call me back because I did not do a good job with their children. And a little bit later that day, the parents called and they said, we think you'll be a great match. Do you want to come start working with our kids tomorrow? And I said, okay, sure. And I knew nothing about autism. I knew nothing about applied behavior analysis. It was like maybe a tiny little chapter in an intro to psych course that I took. But that summer, I worked with a behavior analyst, and I worked with their son. And we went from having a child who ran away from me every time I walked in the door and, cried and screamed the whole time that I was working with him, to having a child who ran towards me when I arrived at the house and started using single word utterances. And when I went back to school my senior year, I was like, everyone needs to know what this is. Everyone needs to learn about behavior analysis. And I was just really lucky because the woman who was the behavior analyst connected me with Dr. Saul Axelrod at Temple University. And I was going to school in Philadelphia, so I was very close to Temple. And so I got connected with their ABA program, and I applied to their program. I got accepted, and basically I graduated on Mother's Day on a Sunday. And the next day, Monday, I started my first course in behavior analysis at Temple. And then kind of that was it for me. I was hooked from then.
So you went to the interview, you worked with the child or you played with the child and realized, okay, well, this is not working. This child doesn't like me at all. And yet
Yes.
you got the job. And that's because I'm sure the family saw someone who didn't give up and who kept trying, right? And that's
Yeah.
what we're looking for. Um, More than anything else, parents are just looking for someone who wants to be there, who wants to help their kids, especially when they're early and struggling. But it sounds like you had a really good behavior analyst to work with, someone who was teaching you how to do things the right way, where the child was wanting to learn how to engage with you and spend time with you. So that's great.
Yeah, yeah, it was really an amazing experience. And kind of the funny piece about it is that um, this child now is in college. So it was so long ago that I've been able to kind of see him throughout his entire school age career continue to progress. And, his parents relate all of his successes to that early intervention that he got because it was so long ago. It wasn't very common for people to be getting that early intervention, but they were dedicated. It all worked out wonderful for him.
And now he's in college. That's awesome. What a great story.
Yeah. Yes, that is my passion in life is making people see the good in what we do as behavior analysts and make them fall in love with it as much as I was from the moment that I started working with my kiddos. So
Yeah, I mean, we all have that. I mean, not all of us. I did talk with one behavior analyst who kind of didn't have it, but for the most part, we tend to have that kind of like light bulb aha moment when we first learn about the principles and start to see the change that they can make when implemented, appropriately with kids. That just kind of changes everything for you. It just kind of changes your perspective on what you want to do. And then I had the same thing. I was in education. I was working in the school system, and we were working with a child who just wasn't doing well, and we couldn't find a path for. And I was trying everything. We were trying, everything we could learn from the Teach program and floor time. I took trainings and all that, and then a behavior analyst came in and just kind of explained the principles to me, and I was like, okay, well, that's the rest of my life. That makes sense. Let's do
yeah,
let's do something with
yeah,
that. Um,
right.
yeah, it's really interesting. And that's why I kind of like to get a little bit of a background on my guests. So thank you guys for sharing.
Of
Um,
course.
I do have a question. How did you guys first meet? Because I don't think you guys went to the same, did you go to the same schools? I was looking at your bios. So how did you guys first run into each other?
It was a pretty wild story, and it's a really fun one. We met doing our BCBA hours, but how we landed there was completely different. At the time, I was in my school psychology program at Lehigh. I was doing my internship for school psychology, and I was placed in a school in the lower part of Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and here I am meeting with my school psychology intern supervisor, and she said, I know the perfect BCBA supervisor for you. You're going to get such great experience and such great hours with this woman. And I'll let Kelly or Katie tell a little bit about her. I snuck her name in there. And so here I am just walking in to meet with my BCBA supervisor, and in walks Katie.
Dr. Kelly McElrath and me. I was at Temple University. I was doing my internship at the same school that Jamie was doing her school psych internship, but mine was just for my BCBA hours. And my supervisor, who ended up being Jamie's supervisor, was Dr. Kelly McElrath. And she was an incredible supervisor. I mean, just so supportive and knowledgeable and gave us the opportunities to do the work. I think that was my favorite part of the whole experience. It wasn't just watch what I do. It was, show me what you can do and let me guide you. And that's really where our work came from. Jamie and I got paired together and they said, there's a classroom down the hall that needs a little bit of help. Can you guys go down and see what you can do for them? And that was the beginning of everything with Self and Match. We were both learning about self-monitoring in our respective programs. From my school, Dr. Saul Axelrod was teaching us about self-monitoring. And in Jamie's program, her mentor, Dr. Ed Shapiro, was teaching her about self-monitoring. And so we were like, why aren't we doing this more in the schools? Everything that we're seeing in schools is very adult directed. How come we're not getting the students more involved in their understanding of their behaviors and how they can help themselves? And so that was kind of the beginning of it all, right, James?
Yeah, absolutely. We realized that our mentors have been researching self-monitoring since the 70s. They have been publishing articles on self-monitoring since before we were born. But what they hadn't done is that they hadn't like brought it into everyone's toolbox. So we were like, how
Right.
do we bring this more into the mainstream?
I mentioned in my intro, that 20 plus years I've been doing this, and there wasn't a lot of discussion about self management or self monitoring of any kind. And in fact, I can't remember anyone talking about it until I came to your workshop. And so the fact that you both had mentors who had been on the scholastic side doing research and stuff related to this, and then put you two together, I think maybe it was kismet, like it was meant to happen. So that's good. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's true. I think that a lot of times when we would go to conferences, we would look through those little books and see all the different topics, and self-monitoring wasn't one you were seeing come up very often.
No,
And it's something that now when we go to conferences, we kind of flip through the books and look, and you're starting to see more and more. And that's our goal. One of our main goals is whether it's self-match or other self-monitoring tools, this should be in everyone's toolbox. This should be in behavior analyst toolboxes. And so how do we get that into the research more? How do we get that into the practical world more so that people are seeing this as a tool to add to their toolbox?
Yep, and that's exactly the way I look at it. It's in my database of programs that my team has to kind of look at and choose and select from. And so it is a tool. It is an added tool that we definitely use whenever the case is correct. So for folks who don't, I mean, we've been talking around it a little bit, but for folks who don't really know what it is, maybe tell us a little bit about just the elevator pitch about what is self and match, how it works, who's it for, and that sort of thing.
On a global level, Self and Match is an evidence-based self-monitoring system that's used in schools, homes, clinics, group homes, camps, colleges, universities, and it is a tool to systematically teach individuals how to self-reflect on their own behavior. Like Katie mentioned, so many tools out there are us telling kids how they do, us telling clients how they do, where Self and Match, as Katie will talk you through the steps, is a way that we are teaching students or clients how to individually self-reflect, and then they're also getting check-ins with staff.
So once you have your considerations guide completed, which is really what I like to call about like taking our behavior analytic brains and putting them into very simplified terms so that anybody who is not a behavior analyst who wants to learn about self-monitoring and how to use it as a tool to help their students can actually do it, right? We try to take all that jargon out to make it very approachable for people. But when it comes down to actually the process of going through and evaluating a student, you are first going to have the student identify if they've engaged in a behavior or not. And as you mentioned, they can do that by circling yeses and nos or smiles and frowns or thumbs up and thumbs down. And that's very individualized for each learner. And then we have the staff come in, or the parents or the clinicians that are supporting the student, and they also evaluate, did the student do this? And they respond with their yeses and nos or smiles and frowns or thumbs up and thumbs down. And then once the student and once the staff have done their responses individually, then we look at comparing the answers, and we're looking for yes matches and we're looking for no matches. And this is something that really sets the system apart from other self-monitoring interventions that are out there. When the student says, yes, I did do what I was expected to do, and the staff says, you're right, you did do what was expected of you, they get at least 2 points. They get 1 point for that honest self-reflection, and they get 1 point for doing the expected behavior. And so that's where you have your yes match. Then if there is a no, if the student says, no, I didn't do what I was supposed to do, and the staff says, you're right, I agree with you, you didn't do what you were supposed to do, and it's a no match, they still get 1 point for that honest self-reflection. And so what we really want to do is to teach students that no is okay. No is an opportunity to learn. It's that taking advantage of that growth mindset, right? We all make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. we're glad that you were honest about that mistake. What can we do different next time so that we can improve upon that? And so that's that no match. So even when students have a moment where they didn't maybe do exactly what was expected, and the staff says, you're right, you didn't, the staff can still say, but I'm so proud of you for being honest and self-reflecting. So even in a moment where they didn't do exactly what was expected, we can still give them that praise for that honest self-reflection and use it as a teachable moment. And so that really sets it apart from other systems that are out there. And then at some point in time, we add up their points, and some of the students get access to reinforcement immediately. Some of them get it on a delayed schedule. We have some students that have it on a very, very delayed schedule, that it's, even once a week or once a month. So we always try to use the least intrusive intervention as possible, right? The least amount of reinforcement that individual needs. And some of our kiddos need a lot of support and they need really frequent access to reinforcement. But for others, we can fade that out pretty rapidly. So at the end of the day, the student responds, the teacher responds, we compare answers, we see how many points they earn, and then at some point in time, they get access to reinforcement.
I was just going to say, I remember in the workshop thinking that how simply brilliant that was, that you weren't just, they weren't just saying, yes, I did. Yes, I did what I was supposed to. No, I didn't do what I was supposed to, but that they actually get credit for, even in the errors, even in their mistakes, if they're able to self-report correctly, and if there's agreement, there's still some benefit there. And I think that really is what makes the whole system, pretty special. And I remember thinking that at that moment. But when people want to implement this, what's the recommendation for how they should be trained on it? I mean, obviously you can purchase the manual. I believe that it's available online. And I think we're going to even talk about how we can help make that available to our listeners here today. But so the manual is available online, but is that enough? Reading the manual, is that generally enough for people to be able to implement it, or are there concerns about implementation? How do you guys address that?
At this point, the manual itself has everything you need to get started, and we can talk you through what's in that manual if you want, but it has every single piece that you would need. Some people love more. Some people love the training. They like to dig deeper. We get to dig deeper when we do trainings. And a blessing of the pandemic, a silver lining, is that we can zoom in anywhere. So we can zoom to Hawaii one day and New Mexico the next and Illinois the third day. So, we do lead trainings. We do have an upcoming training that I'm sure you could link also, Robert. We have one every couple months. We offer a training that's open to the public, so we can tell you when those are. We also do training specifically for school districts or specifically for non-public agencies that are available, and then also at conferences. And all of this is on our website. So yeah, we've been very, very blessed. We've had some schools adopt self-and-match school-wide, not necessarily students that have identified special needs. We have work with a school that has every student at the school is either homeless or have significant housing instability, and they're using self-and-match as a tier 1 tool for kindergarten up through 5th grade. Every student at the school uses it. So we are seeing more and more schools. We have some non-public schools that use it with all of their students as well.
We have a wonderful teacher who joins us from time to time for our intro trainings to talk with gen ed teachers about how she's using it class-wide. She has a class of 30-ish 5th graders, and she wants to make sure that they're ready to transition to middle school. She has them on a schedule where in the beginning of the year, they're checking in 5 times a day, and by mid-year, it's 4 times a day, and by the end of the year, just 3 times a day. And she actually gives them access to reinforcement every single day at the end of the day, because she says it frees up so much of my instructional time because I'm able to get through so much more because I'm not having all the disruptions and interruptions that I was having prior with that many students in my classroom. And what's really neat about it too is that she builds it into her instruction in the sense that she has the students graphing for themselves. And then when they come in for parent-teacher conferences, then the parents have this graph that their child has made to show them the progress that they have done. And so she relates it back to her instruction as well as, the behavior management system in the classroom. So, it's really been amazing to see the different capacities in which self and match has been able to be implemented. And, you shared a little bit earlier that you were using with folks in Germany. And, we've had people to reach out to us from South Korea and Ireland and Canada. And so it's amazing to see that this little tiny project that Jamie and I started working on so many years ago has grown, and how people have, kind of found out about it very naturally.
Well, that's how you have something of value. I mean, for me, similarly, the 7 steps have kind of done the same thing for me. And you just constantly hear about people who you've never met who have benefited so much from the work that you've done, and it's really cool. And I love that there's a teacher who has the entire class on the self and match system, because and then they're graphing. So that's like next level self-management skills. I mean, you're creating a bunch of behavior analysts out of this. But yeah, I think that's really cool. Jamie, did you want to?
Yeah, Robert, I was going to jump on something that you said earlier that Katie said just now, because I think it's so key. The form that the fifth grade teacher is using with her whole class of, 30 something fifth graders will look very different than a form you're using with a preschooler that's been identified on the autism spectrum. And I think one thing that I would want your listeners to really keep in mind if they haven't yet seen Self and Match is the amount of individualization on the forms that comes out of that pre-planning.
We always tell folks that the form that you start off with on day 1 is not the same form that you should have in 2 months from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now, right? Because we want the intervention to be evolving as the learner is evolving.
Yep. ABF, always be fading, right? You always want to be fading a successful program. And so that, you don't want to be doing the same thing forever. You want the child to become more and more independent. And then in order to get there, I'm sure you guys have plenty of tips and techniques to help people to do that as well. Are there any limitations that you guys would say to the age or the developmental level of kids when using Self and Match?
One thing that we feel very strongly about is that you can't, no matter what the learner is, you can't have them start reflecting until you've taught them what it is you expect of them. So in our manual and our trainings, we talk a lot about you can't just roll out a form and say, were you respectful? If you haven't taught what respectful looks like. Yeah. So if you're going to have a student self-reflect on their behavior, you have to systematically teach it. So even our youngest learners or our learners with, more impacted needs, unless you have systematically taught what it looks like to show ownership or what it looks like to follow directions, it's not going to be a successful intervention, because how can you expect a student to self-reflect if they haven't been taught?
Yeah. And the kind of the interesting piece of it is that is people's assumption, Robert, like you said, that maybe I'm going to use this for my kind of higher end of my clientele that are, have these kind of maybe average to above average intellectual ability. But the basic research on self-monitoring shows that individuals with developmental disabilities and with intellectual disabilities can learn how to self-monitor. And so that's always a myth that we try to kind of debunk from folks to make sure that they recognize that this is something that they can use with a lot of different types of learners. Even for learners that are non-vocal learners, they can still learn how to self-monitor. In my dissertation study, one of my participants had an intellectual disability and was one of the most successful users of the intervention. So I love to share that when we do our trainings. Once those learners can effectively discriminate, this is an example of kind and this is an example of unkind, then you know that they're ready to start learning how to self-monitor. And so it's possible for lots of people to self-monitor. Sometimes it takes us a little bit more in the preparation because we really have to do a lot of that teaching, but that is true for all of our learners. As Jamie said, we don't just take a form and we say, okay, today we're going to start self-monitoring on, being kind and being respectful without telling them what that looks like. So
we have to operationally define what we're doing anyway. So all we have to do is make sure that we can then teach that to the child, because they're now we're putting them in the position of the monitor, right? So they have to have that operational definition as well.
Robert, going back to what your initial question was, there is a certain population that we don't see self-image being as effective as of a tool with, and that's individuals that have covert behaviors of lying or stealing. And the reason is because if they're doing a good job at it, we don't know. So if we say, did you steal? And they say no, and we're like, great job not stealing. It's a no. If they had stolen something, we wouldn't have seen it, and then we're accidentally reinforcing that behavior. So there are some outliers, but in terms of the general population, we see it as a successful tool with many individuals.
I think there's sometimes a misconception of when you can use self-monitoring, but it doesn't have to just be for reducing challenging behavior. So it can be for increasing academic skills or social skills, executive functioning skills, functional independent living skills, you name it. You basically can self-monitor, right? We used to joke that the only time that you couldn't self-monitor was when you were sleeping. But now with technology and Fitbits and Apple Watches, you can even self-monitor your heart rate and your, REM sleep during the course of the night with all the technology we have. So it's really possible to self-monitor lots of different behaviors, not just those that you want to reduce.
And you want to be able to reinforce that process so that kids want to monitor themselves on their own.
Yeah.
That becomes part of their life structure is, how am I doing? How am I doing in life? Am I meeting my goals? Am I achieving the things I want to do? Did I have a good day? Did I have a good afternoon? And, what do I want to do to fix that going forward? Because that's kind of self-help is a key. And who thinks to teach self-help to kids with a diagnosis of autism or ODD? I mean, we're so focused on these individual skills that this ability to monitor yourself, I think, you're right. It's so crucial.
And Robert, something that is so key is what you just hit on is most of us have learned the skill of self-monitoring. We do self-monitoring across our day so many different ways. Do you make to-do lists? That's self-monitoring. Do you set an alarm? I set an alarm to show up today on time. That was self-monitoring. Do I step on the scale every morning? Do I balance my bank account? All of these are ways that we self-monitor our behavior to make sure we're paying our bills, that we're showing up at meetings, that we have a calendar, that we're responding to things that are on our to-do list. But many of the individuals we work with have not yet acquired the skill of how to self-monitor. So whether you're using
considered it as an option, it's like.
So, when you ask, and Katie might have a different answer to this, but for me, my life passion right now is teaching self-monitoring, whether you use self-image or not. Like, I just want you to bring this into your classroom, bring this into your homes, into your clinics, to think about how you're systematically going to teach a child to self-monitor their behavior, because I think that's a life skill that will go with them for the rest of their life.
I do have one quick question for you. I don't know if, because it's such a big world, the behavior analysis world is such a big area, and you guys have been kind of focused in one area. Have you guys come across the 7 steps in your work in the past?
It's interesting. When we first met you back in at ABA, we knew who you were. When I remember specifically when you came into the room, we were like, oh my gosh, do you see who's here? And so for as much as you were saying to us that, you felt like you were an early adopter and it was exciting for us to be on your podcast, we also feel very much the same way, that we're like, oh my gosh, we can't believe we're getting this invite, because and we knew who you were as soon as you walked in the door at ABA, and we were very nervous because we're like, oh gosh, now we really have to put on a good show and hope we do a good job, so that maybe you could share the word with other people that as well. And so we were really excited to have an opportunity to come and meet with you, because this is a big deal for us too, to be able to continue to share on, kind of the work that you have been doing.
Well, that's funny. I can definitely tell you that I was clueless to the fact that you would even know who I was when I walked into your workshop back in 2018. But
I remember saying, Katie, look, our books are right next to each other at the bookstore, and he's in our session. We have to be on the best behavior. So.
Oh, that's so funny. That's so funny. Well, I tell you, I really appreciate you guys coming on, taking the time to share with my audience your program. And as we were emailing back and forth beforehand, you guys were so generous to offer the audience here a discounted rate for the system if they're interested. And I know we didn't talk about this in person previously, but it's my understanding that you guys are going to offer like a 10% discount to folks.
Yeah. Yeah, you are welcome to link the book right underneath today's podcast, and if people use that link and enter the code that you put on there, we are absolutely willing to offer 10% to your listeners. And
I saw that you were willing to offer that until like February 15th.
Let's extend it. We know podcast
Yeah.
people listen to it longer, so we'll extend it.
Yeah,
You'll get about
I'd hate for people
yeah.
to find my podcast, be all
No.
excited about this whole thing, and then get to the end and be like, "Oh, I missed the
No,
deadline." So
no, I'm gonna go on today and I'm gonna extend it I think saying 2023 for the year of 2023, if people listen
okay,
to it.
that sounds fair.
That
That
10% code. And it just one thing when you see that book and you see the price point, it comes with not only this book that you'll get in the mail, a physical book, but it also comes with a digital resource center and on a self-match creator, so that what we've done over the years is we want it to be as easy as possible for you to implement this. So as I mentioned, there's so many ways you could set up self-monitoring systems without using self-match, and that's great, and we encourage that. But if you buy self-match, we want you to have everything you need to get started with self-match. So you will have both a manual, an online form portal, and this kind of plethora of online resources. So that all will come with that if you do decide to go that route.
all right. Well, Katie, Jamie's just said it. We get 10% through 2023. You can't take
Yay!
it away. So yeah, I talked to my website person, and I think we're going to have on our website just7steps.com/self and match with the word AND, self and match, one word. So if folks want to go there, they can kind of see exactly what you're offering, and then get a discounted rate. That's really cool. I appreciate you guys doing that. It's pretty exciting.
Robert, I'm leaving here wanting to give your listeners another tool or two besides our book. So I'm going to put my head together and talk with Katie, but I think at least an expectations T-chart that anyone can download and use. I'd like to make that available to all your listeners. So I'll be sending that over to you in an email, and you can put that as a clickable link. So
Yeah, do that. Send me all the links that you think would be valuable and beneficial, and with just like a quick description, and we'll put it right
that's just
into
a free tool. That's a free tool that anyone that listened today can start using. So I'll make sure to get that over to you.
So I think what would be great is that if we can share that T-chart resource, and then also Jamie and I wrote a great article last year in the Frontiers Journal about the importance of setting classroom expectations, because it is just such a simple tool that we sometimes forget about also. And it's been researched since the 1960s. And so it's just such a simple classroom management strategy. And we're, again, trying to just bring it to the forefront for people. But it goes hand in hand with self-monitoring. You have to first know how to identify the behaviors that are occurring or not occurring, and then you can self-monitor. So I think that expectations article would be a great supplement to the T-chart as well.
And do you guys have that available where people would be able to get a hold of it?
Yeah, we
It's
can send you that
an
link.
open source article. So what we'll do is we'll send you an email with our Frontiers article, which will be free for your users, as well as the T-charts, which are free to your listeners. And you can just link those right under the podcast. So there's some resources that hopefully people are leaving with tools in their toolbox to implement tomorrow.
Awesome. Good. That's what we're looking for, right? That's what everyone's looking for. Parent, teacher, behavior analyst, RBT. If you're working with kids, you want to have a toolbox that's filled with valuable tools that you can use. All right. Well, you heard it here, folks. If you're lucky enough to be subscribed and you're getting this podcast fresh off the presses, you have through 2023 to get 10% off on that self and match system. And seriously, guys, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and be a part of this. It's interesting how we run into each other again, and I think the timing is really nice. It was a great opportunity for me to share with my audience, and I hope that you guys found it not intimidating to have to be here on camera, but you did great.
Thanks.
It was a blast. And I look forward to crossing paths in person again, whether it's in Denver or somewhere else. We'll have to keep our eyes open.
Yeah, I need to decide if I'm going to Denver this year. We got to keep getting those CEUs. So I really wish they would keep doing it online because that was so easy and so much cheaper than having to fly and stay in a hotel and everything. But we'll see. We may bump into each other there. If so, we'll have to hit the social together and have a drink.
Yeah, and
We're
we'll
in.
be there. We are presenting and hopefully signing some books. So
Cool.
Yeah.
find us in Denver.
Well, seriously, guys, Jamie, Katie, thank you so much for taking the time and for the generous discount. And so, yeah,
I
those
thought
of
of
you.
one last thing.
Oh, yeah.
Can I
Okay,
do it
sure.
really fast?
Please do.
If you want to If you want to reach us directly, we are always, Katie and I like to joke that we're always around. I'm in San Diego, and so I'm on one time zone. Katie's in Pennsylvania on a different time zone. So if you have any questions after watching or listening or watching today's podcast, just email us and we'll answer them. Our email is selfandmatch@gmail.com. And we're also on a bunch of different social media outlets that you can connect with us, and we'll have Robert link those under today's podcast.
And the word is spelled out AND for and,
Yes.
or is it the?
selfandmatch@gmail.com.
I have the same problem with just 7 steps because I'm always afraid people are going to type out the word 7 when it's just the number 7. So,
Number 7.
Thank you for specifying that. That was definitely great. Yep.
all right, folks, please don't forget to like, to comment, and subscribe. The more that you do, the more people will be able to reach with our podcast. And we want to get this great content out to more people. So take care to everyone, and we'll see y'all back here next week with our next exciting episode. That's all, folks. Thank you so much. And thank you once again, ladies.
Have
Yeah,
a great
have
day.
a great
Have a good
day.
day.
Take care.